Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks, episode 159. Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Astrology, and yay! I put a ring in his nose and dragged him back here. Michael Bartlett. Core Michael, esoteric astrologer extraordinaire, coming to us live from Santa Fe. Yay! Thank you so much for coming back. And I love your new purple beard. You are celebrating the yes, Uranus is part of in Taurus, conjunct the eclipse show live coverage here.
Ready for some new change in form, right?
Right. Oh man. Yeah, I am too. I don't know, the hair's getting wilder or whatever. I'm not brave enough to do purple. Once I did like reddish, but like a pinky red a few years when it first entered Taurus. And then I don't know, I just went back to, I'm like, the Leo in me, it's like, I have to be blonde, but vanity, vanity.
They have these really cool washes and conditioners now that do leave-in color. So if you wanted to have something like just really subtle or just for like a couple of days.
Oh, okay.
I get this colored once a month, and then I do these washes like every couple of days in between to kind of keep, because it just washes out really quickly otherwise.
Oh, okay. So there, all right, everybody, fashion tips here, celebrating Uranus and Taurus.
So if you want to be a little colorful and add a little.
Well, what I wanted to talk about today, this is going to be a juicy segment, as it always is with Michael in the house. Number one is, yeah, we're going to be talking about the eclipses, but what's really exciting is Michael came out with a new book, and we're going to be talking about that. And it's very, very different from any astrology book you've seen. So I'm really jazzed to share that with you. It's called AstroTheatre. And so we're going to be showing you that, talk about that and the eclipse and where the eclipse is going to be happening in the chart of the USA. So we're going to have a really great deep dive. So, okay. Yeah. So eclipse, solar eclipse this Saturday, 10 degrees Taurus, conjunct Uranus, pretty close, 4 degrees away, Uranus wild enough to be feeling those sparkles. So yeah, I just want to hear, what's your feel for this? This is our first solar eclipse right? Because last November we had the lunar in 27 Taurus in November. And so this will be our first Taurus solar eclipse. So wow, welcome to the, welcome to the whatever.
Welcome to the new world, right? In a way. Taurus, I know it's funny because I think of Taurus and there's so many different layers of Taurus, right? There has to do with, I think of it as kind of like that toddler phase, you got that me, mine, itis sort of an energy, it's really wants to claim things for itself. It's really loyal. There's can be a little bit of a hoarding energy. There can be some stubbornness. There can be beautiful. I also think of like papal bull, like the orders that the Pope sets out, it's like these things, there's this power also in the way the bull. And in esoteric astrology, they talk about the third eye of the bull, or the singular eye of the bull, those two horns coming together and making one focal point. So with Uranus in there, we've been experiencing these new changes, right? We're seeing these different things with AI, people marrying robots and cartoon characters, and these are all new forms, right? It's kind of like bringing in the new Aquarian age. And then also we've got Pluto over there stationing retrograde just before the eclipse at the end of Capricorn, not necessarily in a trining aspect, but they're both the earth signs. So therefore they're trining by sign energy. So, that's kind of lending to it. And Pluto's getting ready to go into Aquarius shortly, right? So there's this thing of like, what do we need to change? Why are, these earthly things that are going on? I also think of resources when I think of Taurus. And I was reading an article this morning on Elon Musk and, buying Twitter. And now there are these individuals, it's the 0.0001% of the population who now have vast, amazing amounts of wealth compared to, it's not even, we're not even in competition anymore. So it's very interesting to see what even, all these things mean. So, what are we waking up to? Eclipses are like, wait, what are we soaking in that we haven't been paying attention to, right? Like they say, we don't know who discovered water, but it probably wasn't fish. When we're sitting in our own perspective, we don't perceive things, we're not aware of the air around us unless it's colder or warmer than us, so there are all these little subtleties. So, we habituate as human beings, we make things normal. And I think what Uranus does and eclipses does is it kind of shakes the ox cart and it says, hey, are you sure this is, is this the ox cart you want to use? Do you realize that, the wheels are actually square, they aren't round, or they're made out of wood, they should be made out of rubber? What kind of improvements need to be made? Because Uranus is always about evolving and
Improvement.
and becoming something better. It's not just being a rebel for no purpose, unless it's really operating that lower vibration. But it's like awakening, awakening us to it, these things.
Right. And I also think of an eclipse being, I love when, was it in Schitt's Creek, was it David, the character of David? And, he would be appalled if something wasn't looking good or right. And he would just go like this with his hands. He's like, this doesn't work. This doesn't. So that the eclipse is, that's the universe is saying, this doesn't, not only does it not work, it's long over, everything has an expiration date, it just has an expiration date. And it's like, you have to, and you haven't wanted to look at that. Well, it's time to look in this area when it comes to Taurus, Scorpio, when it comes to food and resources and the things we value, it's time to look again. And, if it weren't for, I remember being in the 80s, I was living in New York, and, we had the mid 80s, there were Taurus Scorpio eclipses, and there was all this, of course, that was Reagan era, and it was a whole different ballgame, right? And the money system, and there was that BCCI scandal, and it took down like thousands of banks went out of business, and it was that huge consolidation of wealth, like you were talking about earlier before we got on that thing. And yet now it's just so different because Uranus in the mix. It's like,
right. And so you're seeing things like Florida's Republican governor going after Disney. It's these things of like, we're the court, this thing of like, where the Republicans have been so corporate for so long. And now, it's been so weird the last few years, right? The Republicans are in bed with the Russians. They're doing all these things that like we were all trained that Republicans don't ever do. And so here they are like now like they're going to play hardball with their major employer in their state. That's just going to encourage one of these other states, which Colorado and I think one of the Carolinas have already said, hey, if you don't like it in Florida, we'd be more than happy to have you in our state.
Right.
Because even though Disney is getting all those great tax credits, the amount of wealth that is being spent in Florida every year by those families staying in all those things, the airlines, the taxes and everything being collected, that's an amazing boon to the state of Florida.
Yeah, it's a lot. So so getting back to the eclipses, this concept of the expiration date,
like
and the whole feeling about Uranus of taking, even if we know we have, the astrologers know it's going to be, it is a wild ride. We've already been seeing the wild ride. I think about the forest fires and out west, and the detrimental effects of the earth, that people are finally waking up. The levels of drought, that Lake Mead, that the bathtub ring. Oh my God, it's like it's almost, it's really loud. And I feel like on a collective level, this is really it's kind of scary. Yesterday I had an experience of this. I went to get my license renewed. I decided to go in person, and the person, they couldn't process it because the system went down, and it was with the state. It wasn't anything to do with the local office. And so they're just completely, they couldn't do it. They tried IT, and they called their IT, and the in-house IT, and this, that, and the other. And it was finally I just went home. But before I went home, I went to this other store, and they were saying, oh, I'm sorry, right now for the last couple of hours, it's been cash only, because it's the whole town and the neighboring town. There was something, and it was jarring. I had enough cash to buy what I needed, but it was just really, I felt it was the universe in my face going, okay, welcome to the eclipse, like, and all these comforts. And we are so dependent on technology. And even the supermarket, they were having problems. I said, did this start around 2 hours ago? And they said, yep. And so, And think about that.
Yeah, these are in the earth signs, right? And we live on the physical plane. So I mean, with Pluto doing that thing, and then Uranus, this is this ongoing process. Unfortunately, it's beyond the square at this point for the Uranus Pluto. So it's, kind of working in support, but it's also, bringing back that energy from the mid 1960s again, that is about, shock and change, like how are we going to evolve ourselves? How do we do it in a way that we support everyone? How do we do it in a way that isn't taking advantage of some people? I mean, the
Right.
awareness that's happened in the last few years for so many things, is, the sexism, the racism, on all so many levels are being brought up into such an awareness. And now that we've got this all in our conscience, so how do we work this out in a way that works well? One of the things I always find, and I think this is so Taurus, Uranus and Taurus, is 50% of the population are women. And how does it feel to be a woman when there are a lot of these things that are coming up with the transgender and everything, giving these kind of special rights where there are certain rights that women still don't even get to enjoy?
Well, and then there's even this backlash is really big with Florida and other states, I want to say Kentucky or Tennessee, the governors. And I mean, they are, I'll write to some LGBT friends and clients of mine. I'll say, just don't, please, Pluto and Capricorn, it's not going to survive. They can fight all they want, but it's a losing battle. It's like, and this to try to hold back this tsunami, good luck, because it's just not going to happen. But it's always part of that. There's always that backlash, it's
Right.
Part of that rhythm of life. But
and especially, and it's the thing of, the Republican Party is a lot, about things not changing, about things, kind of staying static. And, and then the Democratic Party has kind of gone, probably a little bit too far off to the left, for most people. And so there's creating this whole, creating more polarization, as opposed to the fact that, we're actually, for the most part, mostly all moderates.
Yeah, the truth of the matter. Yeah.
Some people are socially conservative and fiscally liberal, and others are socially liberal and financially, Republican, and it just really depends on it. But I think, it's such a great opportunity. What you said earlier too is really great with Scorpio and Taurus. It is about our digestion. So this is like a great time for people, like, what are your routines? What do you need to do to take care of yourself? Are you feeding yourself the right diet? Are you watching the right TV shows? Are you around the right kind of people? Taurus is about our, really kind of the fundamental closest relationships, that we really value. So, so many of us in our expression of who we are have people around us who aren't really ideal for us, but we keep them around for reasons that probably aren't right. And so, sometimes we have to just go like, hey, you know what? We don't really see eye to eye, or you have a very different way of being. And you know what? You go and be yourself, and I'll be myself, and God bless you. It's not anything about, that it's bad and denigrated, but it's like, not all of us are here to be around everyone.
Not all. Yeah. Yeah. And just recognizing that and just allowing it and being accepting. I think that I'm going to pull up, by the way, let me pull up the USA.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to pull this up here. Here's the USA chart for everybody with the transits. Well, here is the transits for the solar eclipse. Here we have it in, let me see. This is whole, so everybody, I use whole sign houses. Yeah. And yeah. Oh, wait, did I? Yeah, April. Oh, no, this is, let me pull up the lunar eclipse. Ding, 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 ding.
There we go.
Okay, yeah,
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so we, it's the 6th and 12th houses, and those are tough houses. Those are where there's struggle, where there's, a loss. 12th house could be, a loss, and a south node in the 12th house for the USA chart. Yeah, many levels.
The Pluto return. You got Saturn on the moon.
Right, Saturn's great. Yeah, Saturn's pretty much 3 degrees from the moon, so that's a lot about constriction. But constriction to say, let's, with Aquarius, it's like we have to think about other people.
Yeah, and what's nice is Saturn rules that Aquarius moon, so in a way it's not. While that moon would normally not really appreciate Saturn's presence, with it being both in Aquarius, there can be a nice little kind of a framework and a guidance and an understanding, and not necessarily the sense of it being absolutely restricting. because that Aquarian moon's going to have a bit of a restriction to it anyway, emotionally, right? It doesn't feel things, it thinks feelings.
Right, it thinks feelings. That's a good way to, and it loves to. Where do it finds comfort? The cell phone. Your head is in the cell phone.
Or
Unfortunately,
analyzing, reviewing something that's gone on and really thinking about it and analyzing what it is that didn't work, as opposed to like, wow, you know what, my heart hurts, or or that really like makes my stomach upset. That's not. It's usually for Aquarians, they're a little more oriented in their head.
cerebral. Yeah. And here we've got Sun, Moon, Taurus with that nice, here's the stellium in Pisces. Of course I get nervous, I mean, even last year when I was looking ahead, I'm like, oh man, that dark side of Jupiter and Pisces and Neptune. It's like, man, that could be genocide. And I didn't want to like talk about that back then, but then of course what happens? Ukraine. And now they're saying, well, they were thinking of annexing Moldova, the little tiny landlocked country. I'm like, oh my God, this is like, it's just horrific. But the other side of it is this grace and peace and compassion, so this is that on the positive side, this is all, beaming its beautiful sextile over this whole eclipse. So we have friends looking out for us, and you may not see them from these higher realms. This could be an overwash of transcendental consciousness that is part of this. When I look at this, Michael, this Uranus conjunct, with the sun, that's like, our future selves, or you could say Kundalini awakening. I think about enlightenment and self-realization and Kundalini awakening. So maybe it'll take having, unfortunately for some of us, it takes having especially Americans, we're spoiled, and sometimes it takes a catastrophic shakeup to like really align ourselves with our authentic selves.
Right. And when I say that Uranus, Sun, Moon too, is this wonderful unification of the individuated self in a holistic, synthesized manner. That would be, to be honest, would be the highest expression of that. I don't think, that's not what 90% of the planet's going to do. A lot of this, because in esoteric, the Taurus Scorpio axis is fourth ray, which is called harmony through conflict. And as my Scorpio friend Aaron Sullivan likes to say, Scorpio has to kind of get sick and tired of itself. These are drama signs. These are two drama signs. It's about Mars and Venus. It's about relationship, getting what you want and dealing with these things. And, how do we compromise? It's nice that we have this wonderful Pisces energy. Here's that Mars coming in. It's the ruler of Scorpio, right on, sextiling that Sun, Moon, and saying, hey, you know what? How do we guide ourselves? And Mars and Pisces isn't ideal. It's not it's like, how do you push yourself forward in a direct manner when you're completely underwater? It's not easy unless you're really astute at it. So it requires a little bit more of an intuitive understanding and letting go of maybe that pushing mind and allowing more of that intuitive sense within oneself to come forward.
Yeah, I'm thinking of
fundamental. Sorry.
Oh, you remember, how people have bracelets who say like WWJD, like what would Jesus do, or what would Buddha do? I'm thinking of like Mars and Pisces, like what would a mermaid do? Act like just swim with it, roll with it, right? Exactly. Don't stop fighting. Fighting in the water is not a good plan.
Because at its root, Taurus actually loves things to be like, kind of nice and simple and easy and comfortable and luxurious. Good food, good company, nice clothing, nice things to sit on. And with Uranus there, it's like, things aren't all that comfy. You go to sit on your sofa that you really love, and one of the legs pops off.
Right. Well, it's saying, oh, it's time to buy a sofa that's been responsibly sourced, or
right.
fair trade.
That's a good point. Yeah, right.
And with diet too, if you think about sixth house, like health and diet, and I just see this as a major turning point for, we've already seen so much about like the vegan revolution, and the vegan products and food products is now this billion-dollar industry. It's been growing for the last, decade, but there could be a whole nother change point here for that with, unfortunately, the AI aspect of, they have this lab, it's really creepy. They have this lab grown meat now. You've probably heard about that. They're like, we don't need animals to have meat anymore. We could just grow it in a lab. And it is very, very sci-fi scary. But the other side of it is, hey, maybe, don't harm the animals. Think about the collective instead of just your comfort zone. Think, what about the Earth's comfort zone? Do you think it's good for the Earth to be, you're deforesting the Earth with burning down the rainforest so you could graze cattle for meat eating, which isn't really good. It's not good. There's it's a lose-lose for the planet, for people's health. And now I feel like this is a place where things could really change and maybe people would wake up and see. And I think we already are waking up and seeing, look at the toll we've, put on the Earth with all the, the forest fires, and Mother Nature is, screaming and crying right now. It's like, ugh.
And the sixth house is our, is our daily routine. So, this is like shaking up our daily routines. Those of us who go to the grocery store and are used to seeing like 15 versions of something, it's not there anymore. I mean, I think the golden age of abundance has passed.
Yeah.
I think our ability to basically go into a store as an American and get kind of anything you want is now, that is not going to be what we're going to be experiencing going forward. I think, even though, we've been working towards making foodstuffs, Monsanto's been doing their Frankenfoods and other things to try and make it easy for us to be feeding people around the world consistently year round. The process of that, it reminds me a lot of Atlantis in a way, this manipulating of DNA and these small bits of what create the universe in such a way that we think that we're kind of started acting like gods again. And it's, I don't know. You don't
play with, and I also, speaking of acting like God, I just read that the Large Hadron Collider is back. They're ramping it back up again, that apparently they took it offline. So for those of you who aren't familiar, LHC, or Large Hadron Collider, is this literally a monstrosity thing, which it splits atoms and, I don't know, dark matter, all this hugely, talk about Atlantis all over again, right? The abuse of technology and power, but it's in a little village in Switzerland under the ground. And there's actually a smaller one did you know there's one in Chicago as well?
No.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things, like when they said, they were like, oh, well, we don't know really what's going to happen when we turn this thing on. I mean, that's like kind of like these things, like, are you creating a wormhole? Are you, creating, are we now like in an alternate reality? I mean, who knows what these things are creating when you start changing at that level, that molecular level.
Yeah, like, yeah, I think of like Mickey Mouse and the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's like, uh-oh, and now it's this runaway thing, and and the GMO mosquitoes. They're like, oh, well, these mosquitoes, we'll just modify mosquitoes, so then what? They don't bite people, or it's just, it's getting that LHC. I was not happy to see that, and I'm like, oh, there's eclipse season. Here comes the LHC again, and. What was really freaky is the guy that invented the internet, Tim Berners-Lee. He worked for CERN, which is the CERN is the people who put that thing on. So it's just a strange little configuration of So anyway, but AI and overstepping, playing God, overstepping. Where there is no rule book of morals. It's such a movable, sliding scale there, and that's the tricky point. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this, all of these ideas being flushed up right now with this solar eclipse. I don't know. It seems to me, and I haven't studied deeply the one yet in the end of the year, solar eclipse in Scorpio, but that'll be a south node, of course, and I just feel like, but this one, I think because the presence of Uranus right there with the eclipse is just such a game changer.
I completely agree. Yeah, it's these next, and the truth is, it's not just, it's the next few years are not going to be easy.
Too, I don't know if you've seen Biden's chart. But he's got a 12th house sun, a bunch of planets in
Scorpio.
in
'Cause he's a
Scorpio.
Sag rising. Yeah, my Sag rising is at 1109. So I mean, I'm kind of aligned with the US Sibley chart.
You're right.
And
Yeah. Well, here,
Biden is too.
yeah, here's
You know, I mean,
here's
you've probably
Biden's
seen
chart.
this, but if you pull a chart, if you pulled the chart for every single president who's been in the United States, they all have significant there's always significant alignments with the birth chart of the United States.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. George Bush's, the second George Bush, the son, he was his son was like a conjunct the US sun, you know, because he was born like July 5th. So yeah, everybody does. Well, here's yeah, so this is Joe Biden's chart, and you know, that's a little concerning to me. You know, you get this South Node conjunct his Mercury in the mix. I don't know if you've seen that, but
Yeah, I mean, I remember when, you know, he got elected, a lot of people were like, they didn't really see him possibly making it through his first term.
yeah. And here's the it's on his son, which is the leader of the country. I mean, this is not the USA chart, but he is the leader, and there's the sun, the moon, and the sun, and Venus. I wish I could make this bigger, but it doesn't allow me to expand it. Actually, I could make it a little bigger if that can.
That's fine.
See it better. And Harris too. Harris has some. Kamala Harris has some 12th house, 6th house, 12th house action. So yeah, this is definitely a changing point. And if not physical, then just some kind of maybe his you know, when you think about Mercury, with that you know, Sun and Mercury, and it could just be about beliefs, or you know, his it could just be a deep process for him, something on a, you know, if you look at it like esoterically. I wonder, like, how would you look at this esoterically for somebody like Biden?
So, well, esoterically, I mean, for the sun, yeah, I mean, with the Mercury there in Scorpio, because Scorpio is ruled by Mars on both the esoteric and the traditional level. So, I mean, in that sense, it's really great because, and with it being the hard part is it's the 12th house. And so with it being the 12th house, it's like, you know, how do you shine out in a way that, you know, people take you seriously? I mean, I think the sad part, what I see a lot of is I think there's a lot of people who kind of see him as a little bit of a joke, especially the younger generations. You know, and so I don't think they see that force and what he brings. And whenever you see anyone with all this 12th house stuff, you know, a lot of it's just behind the scenes. And I mean, he's so well connected. He's such a politician.
Right,
you know,
power broker behind the scenes, yeah. And then it also could reflect too, he's had an enormous amount of tragedy and loss, with the 12th house being loss, with you know, his wife dying and his infant daughter in the car crash, and then his son dying of cancer, and you know, so yeah, I mean, that he's certainly been, you can see it astrologically, you know, he's been through a hell of a ride as he moved through the corridors of power in all his decades. He did face enormous tragedy. So yeah, it's
and then it's kind of mirrored again. He's got that vertex in the 8th house with Jupiter, you know, not too far off. So I mean, there's something, you know, he's a lot more sensitive than he leads than you believe.
Yeah.
You know, even though he's got that Saturn Uranus, you know, can you know, with his descendant. I mean, there's Maverick energy right there, the Saturn Uranus. I mean, there's the Aquarian rulers on his descendant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's really true. I mean, he is a humanitarian, and he does believe in equality. And those would be the things I would say between Gemini and Aquarius together are really crucial for him. And those are in conjunct his, you know, the Scorpio planets.
Right, in conjunct, right? The blind spot can't be seen.
So it's like he sits there, you know, like I think some of the things, like he'll say things, and it's good. He's kind of learning, like he says things, and he says, well, that's my opinion and not my political statement, you know, and I like that different. I mean, that's a Gemini statesman. That's Gemini Saturn. I think right there is like, please understand, you know, I'm allowed to have my personal opinions, you know.
Right. On a separate track from yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway. Well, anyhow, yeah. So there was our little gander through the the political landscape, but anyway, but so
I'd say, like, for people out there who are listening, the best things to do for yourself for this weekend is, I think I'm a big list maker, write a list of like the things that are working in your life and the things that aren't. Look at your diet. What do you need to maybe make adjustments? What are things that you can do that you can start making? You might have an idea of some big changes you want to make, but big changes happen a lot easier when you start making smaller steps. So like, what can I do today that's sustainable that I can actually keep doing? Because a lot of times, it's like what we do January 1st, right? We make, I'm going to make these New Year's resolutions. Well, they're so big and overarching, by the time you get to January 31st, you've forgotten them all because like, well, there's no way I'm going to get them. So like,
right.
Taurus is also, it's like kind of like little pieces. What I like to say about with my Taurus friends is like, you want something from them, you just put a little bit of hay in front of them and you step back quietly.
You put a little hay.
You have to give them a little treat of some kind and make them happy, and move back. If you ever worked with animals, you don't come up to an animal asking for it. You step back asking for it, and then it'll come to you. You create a vacuum.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, that's good advice, especially with the Taurus eclipse. It's got to be comfort food, and I see too the Uranus conjunction is like, oh, it's okay we understand comfort food, but how about having it be healthy comfort food? Like,
right.
It could be vegan, non-GMO, and so let's
organic Dorito chips. That's what
organic, yeah, make it organic and gluten-free, non-GMO, and then. And so we're not trying to take away your comfort, although you have to, when you think about when Uranus went into the sign of 0 degrees of Taurus, that was the day after was the Kilauea eruption. And just like in Taurus fashion, it was a slow plodding. When Uranus went into Aries, we had the explosion of the BP oil rig exploding in the Gulf. So there was ocean into fire, and it was this boom, over and done. But the Taurus energy of that plodding, that going on for months and months, that lava flow. So it was the 3 months. It didn't stop for 3 months. So I think maybe we could be seeing these interruptions in our comfort zones in our food supply that are this slow plodding, which requires out of the box thinking, Uranian energy. How are we going to improvise? How can we work with this and keep honoring the earth and keep waking up. I know one simple thing we could all do is like turn the dang lights off. I can't stand when people are in rooms and there's nobody in that room and the light is on. It's like, what a waste. And the other day I just read that the 83% of the world's population is dealing with light pollution. Light pollution, 83% of the earth. You see those maps from outer space, it's horrendous. Europe is like one
here
blob.
in Santa Fe. It's one of those things where they worked on the night sky for that reason. But it's also, I think there's that inherent thing where people are also kind of like lonely, and I think light gives people, or the people who leave the television on all the time in the background, which, oh my God, please don't do that. Please don't, because especially when you go to sleep, because you don't know what's playing at the time and it's programming you.
Yeah. It's nasty. Yeah. Unplug it. Like literally, I unplug my internet cord when I go to sleep. I take them out of the wall. It's just, yeah. And I sleep. Oh, when I started doing that several years ago, I did it several years ago. And I'm telling you, my sleep pattern, boom, I always was a good sleeper, but boy, the quality of my sleep immediately, you'll see an immediate change. So trying to work your way off the grid and not taking these things for granted and like, think about it, unplug that dang thing, so yeah.
Can we pause just for 1 second? Can you pause?
Sure, absolutely.
You just need to check.
Okay, so I know you're looking like, what happened to Michael? Wait a minute, that looks changed. He just changed rooms. And we were just remarking how this is exactly how this is like live coverage of the eclipse, a disruption in our routine, but we're just going with the flow. So, and this is Lily.
It's Lily with
a special guest.
Her little the Leo rising, Mars and Taurus on her midheaven.
Oh, sweet girl! Look at her. She's awesome. So I want to talk about your book. This is
Sure.
I love this book. The Astrological Mavericks is so, I love that one. We if you haven't already, go back to the I will put it in the comment in the link below to go to that It's a wonderful book, a really great resource book for understanding archetypes in our own chart and what it takes to change the world, called Astrological Mavericks, what it takes to change the world. So I will put that in. But I also am going to talk today about this new book of Michael's. And let me pull that up, get that done. Here it is. And this is called AstroTheatre, a revolutionary approach to the ancient art of astrology. And I look at this non-binary goddess with, it looks like a Taurus headdress with the moon and the sun and the moon. So this book, so tell us about this revolutionary approach, and why did you, what called you to write this?
Sure. So years ago, I learned with an astrologer here in town called Tom Brady, not the football Tom Brady, but Tom Brady, the astrologer here in Santa Fe. And years ago, he and Barbara Shermer did a workshop here in Santa Fe called Astrodrama. And they like set up a tent, and they had a bunch of people who acted. You'd give your birth chart to them, and then they would have a whole group on the stage act out your chart, which I thought was really exciting. You see a lot more of it now. Jason Hawley does a lot of it. A lot of other astrologers are doing it. But I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could, for someone who doesn't maybe have those friends or lives really remotely and wants to learn about astrology and see it visually, how can they do it? So I worked with a couple of different friends, and all the images were hand painted by a friend of mine, Christine Cianci in San Francisco, in oil and plastic. And then, so we have them as just to figure themselves act. So the planets are actors. So each one of the planets is an actor, and then they wear different costumes and have different tools based on the sign in which they reside. Mm. So it just kind of just shifts a little bit of it. So the costume is basically the same for each one for the sign, but they're like slightly different variations. So like the one, like the front cover, that's an Aquarian moon. So it's got like the flower thing carrying forward and letting it forward, and it's got kind of like that. We wanted kind of like a steampunky kind of a look for it. So you kind of like look at it very much, almost a little bit Monty Python-ish in a way. Kind of got a fun little way about
Monty
it. So,
yeah, it is kind of a Monty Python. So that's, yeah, there it is, the Aquarian with the water, and it's a vase of flowers.
Yeah, the new, and then wearing, leather knee-high boots with a skirt, and just, being just fun and usual. It's like with me with my beard, like just being out there a little bit, having some fun, being different in the expression of oneself. So, years ago, as I was telling you before, and I have an article on my website at cormichael.com that I wrote that kind of spurred all this on. Is years ago I was reading through the encyclopedia, and I came across a thing on stained glass, and I was like, oh, interesting. And I had like this little vision. I was down in the workshop and doing something. I said, oh, maybe I have a past life doing stained glass. Well, fast forward like a year or so later, and I went and had a reading from a psychic, and she said, oh, you had this very interesting lifetime where you did stained glass. And I was like, well, what are the chances of that? When you have a past life reading, if you don't believe in past lives, you figure they're going to tell you, oh, well, you were a warrior, you were a priest, or you were a king, or you were a queen, something. But who's going to say stained glass?
Yeah.
So I loved it. So the first thing it helped me with is right off the bat, I knew there's no such thing, that past lives existed was one thing. And then secondarily, it's this idea of capturing and using imagery as a way to explain things. And like a picture speaks 1,000 words, or like with stained glass, was the main reason for a lot of them was to show the metaphors and the allegories in a way that non-literate people could understand.
Right.
So my goal with this was like, people who don't understand astrology would be able to look at it, and everyone understands imagery, and they go like, oh, I get that part, I get that part. And also there's something about when we say things to people, depending on their defensive structure, they will hear or they won't hear what we say. But we don't kind of have that thing when it comes to imagery. Imagery kind of goes in a different way in our brain. Yeah. So those are the main reasons for it. And then each one has like a little 3-word, there's images of each, and then there's just like a little 3-word saying. There's also, if you want, you can go on to the App Store for Apple, and it has a little app, and it's 99 cents. And you can kind of, it has like a thing, you can do it as a, what do they call it? Like oracle cards, where you could press like a random set, and it's really fun. Or you can do the one that where you pick up each one and you can look at them. And friends of mine who are familiar with astrology have done it, and they'll look at each one of their planets like, oh my God, that's right. I didn't kind of think about that part of it, in themselves in that way. So it kind of helps them recognize some things in a different way.
Yeah, I know it's true, because you could be studying, I mean, obviously astrology is this lifelong study, right? It never ends. And sometimes even the simplest things, I know my teacher in Hellenistic astrology at Chuta Baba, he would tell us, you can never, what did he say? You can never spend too much time on the basics. And it's true. I mean, even somebody's been around it for years, you just, something clicks and you're like, I never saw my son that way. That's really cool. And then you go down that rabbit hole and it's like a whole nother, all these revelations. So yeah, it's easy, it's fun. It's whether you run around it a lot and and the visual, I love the fact that everything is just so visual. And when I first started my practice, I got this message from spirit to make astrology more experiential and kind of marrying the two, and I got this message. It was a very deep rabbit hole what you're going into, but I feel like you're on the same, like, no pun intended, you're on the same page with this. And
well, it's kind of funny,
really
and I think when you and I were talking about earlier, or might have been at the beginning of the conversation you've had, I've been talking for a bit today, but the idea of fish not discovering water because they're in it, like these things sometimes, like, we're so in it, and it's so nice to do something that kind of pulls us out of ourselves. And I think that's what the air signs are really great at, is like pulling us out of our consciousness in a way to go like, oh, perspective. I always think of Aquarius as having like a little bit of a periscope that can go up out of its head and like kind of look around a little bit and go like, what's the truth here?
Yeah, that's true. A little periscope. You could have put the periscope on her. But no, I think you did a great job of showing Aquarian the astro drama. I feel I'm really feeling guided to use that book of when I'm going to be doing this little mini course in June, and just the basics. But again, it's because several people have asked me to please, can you teach? And so, but for me, it has to be fun, and so it's simple and easy, and it's a way of jump on and really, and I feel like that book will help people. So I'm gonna, all right, everybody, you hear that it's on the reading list. It's on to catch
and just to let you know, in addition to the signs and the planets, the last part are the houses. So they're basically, because the idea originally was to be, and one of these days I'd love to find someone who'll do it, to program it so it could actually be like an app that you could like plug in your birth information, and then you see the planets swirling around in the sky, and then they become embodied going into a dressing room, and then they come out wearing the clothing that they're supposed to for their sign, and then you can see the reactions and the relationships. Because for you and I as whole sign people, it makes perfect sense. Like if someone comes into the room, they're part of the conversation, right?
Right.
And that's what's kind of neat with it, is like when you see all these images together, it also gives you a sense, like when I saw all the images together, because sometimes it's nice to lay out a chart and put the images together. And what I found when I did that is that like stelliums, you can kind of see how that can be almost like a football team coming at you, or a football team inside you that just has like this force that goes along, like you can't really stop because there's so, it's like, what do you call it? All the horses are going forward,
Right. This huge entourage, is coming along for the ride.
It gives, there's one way to look at it with the chart, which is fine with the two-dimensional circle, but like there's something about when you add the visuals and the figures and the way they look at one another, and you kind of go like, oh, I can kind of get the new, more of the nuances that way, and then be able to see then hopefully be able to have some sort of an observational, objective, neutral viewing of oneself to be able to adjust and make changes like what we need with the eclipse and Uranus here.
Yeah, I like that. That is, it is indeed revolutionary. Ooh, what a concept. Just in time for our Uranus eclipses, perfect timing, right?
Exactly.
They call us.
And if you want to do some sort of a raffle or something at some point, I'd be happy to offer a signed book, or when you go to
a signed book,
do your class, I'd be happy to do some signed editions for you. So
thank you.
That helps. I'd be happy, and personalized to whoever it is for, as well as for you if you like. So
that's so, thank you. That's so kind. Yeah. I would love that. Yeah, let's do it. Let's like, oh my God, me, the Leo, like I ain't doing nothing unless I'm having fun.
Exactly. And that's what's so fun about this area too, and that's what I like about the AstroTheatre, is because it should be fun. It's like how to be playful, how to be silly about it, because then it operates a whole different part of our brain, and it doesn't have, it's life.
It is life.
It's as serious and intense as we want it to be.
Right. Do you want it to be a horror story, a comedy, a sitcom, or a documentary? Or a biopic, or what have you? Cool. Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you. That's beautiful. And yes, I do take you up on your offer. And so, yeah. Well, there you go, folks. There's our episode. I'm so appreciative of you joining us. Always an honor, Michael.
Bless you. It's so great to see you and connect with you so much, Irlianna. And look forward to hearing more about for the class. And congratulations, your podcasts are doing so fantastic. And it's just so nice to be popping in here and there and seeing the advancement of the beautiful message you're providing to the universe. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. That's sweet of you. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Well, that was episode 159, and we have more coming, especially because it is eclipse season, is the Super Bowl for astrology twice a year. So yeah. So all right, stay tuned with us, and we will see you next time. In the meantime, Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Speaks, StarSoundastrology.com. Thank you all for listening. Namaste.
Namaste. Bless you all.